Had a friend of mine send me a thing once, and then we'll get on to what you're here for, but I'm going to give you this little thing. Maybe you can use it somewhere. When my time on earth is gone and my activities here are past, I want they bury me upside down and my critics can kiss my ass.
This is Bob Knight, a coaching titan whose unparalleled knowledge of the game defined college basketball. A three-time NCAA champion, Olympic gold medalist as a coach, and holder of 902 career coaching wins, Knight revolutionized the game with his disciplinarian coaching style and his unmatched focus on the fundamentals. But amid his legendary career, one particularly fascinating aspect was the players he admired most, the ones who stunned him with their talent and ability to absorb his teachings. So, let's dive into Bob's favorite players of all time and why they all earned his admiration. But before proceeding, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. And like this video, this will mean the world to us. Thanks. Michael Jordan, the exception. He was a relentless competitor, unparalleled in his drive to win. While Bob Knight never coached Jordan in college, his brief connection to MJ during the 1984 Olympics became one of the most memorable chapters in basketball history. Knight held Jordan in the highest regard, famously stating, "When God made Michael Jordan, he made the perfect basketball player."
The kid is just an absolutely great kid. If I were going to pick the 3 or 4 best athletes I've ever seen play basketball, he'd be one of them.
He was just 21 years old at the time, a rising star who had flashed his brilliance at the University of North Carolina, but his performance under Knight cemented his reputation as a player destined for immortality. From his dazzling offensive displays to his suffocating defense, MJ didn't just play basketball. He dominated every aspect of the game. And what set him apart was never just his physical gifts, his explosiveness, or his precision shooting, but it was his mental toughness and unrelenting work ethic. Garnett and Tim Duncan were drawn to win at all costs. Similarly, Knight always admired MJ's refusal to accept mediocrity. Their philosophies aligned perfectly. Knight, who demanded excellence from his players, once said, "Michael wasn't just talented, he loved challenges."
If I were going to pick people with the best ability I'd ever seen play the game, he'd be one of them. If I were going to pick the best competitors that I'd ever seen play, he'd be one of them.
He wanted the responsibility of being the guy who decided if his team won or lost. Jordan embraced Knight's style, thriving under his intensity during their run with Team USA. The 1984 Olympics were pivotal not only because it marked his first opportunity to showcase his skills to the world, but because he set the tone early for what his professional career would become. And throughout the tournament, MJ was unstoppable, leading the team in scoring, while also locking down opponents defensively. His confidence bordered on arrogance, yet Knight loved it, calling him the most complete competitor I'd ever worked with. And for Knight, MJ was the ultimate embodiment of what basketball greatness looks like. The gold medal victory was a testament to his brilliance in international play, but it was also a glimpse into his competitive psyche. He wasn't content just to win, he wanted to dominate, and that mindset would become the foundation for an NBA career unlike any other. Like Tim Duncan and Garnett, MJ entered his professional career fixated on greatness from day one. Drafted 3rd overall by the Chicago Bulls in 1984, he came into a league filled with stars like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, but he wasted no time proving he belonged in their company. He was electric from the start. His inaugural season was marked by jaw-dropping highlights and record-breaking performances, including a rookie scoring average of 28.2 points per game. Knight would often reflect on his mentality, saying his success was inevitable because he outworked everyone around him. And as Tim Duncan and Garnett became benchmarks at the power forward position, MJ quickly became the standard for the shooting guard role. By his 3rd year in the league, he began to shatter records, putting up 63 points in a playoff loss against the mighty Boston Celtics in 1986, a performance so brilliant that Bird described it as God disguised as Michael Jordan. It wasn't just his skill that stood out, it was his obsession with improvement. Knight admired how Jordan was relentless in the film room and on the practice court, and beyond his unparalleled athleticism, he had the gift of discipline, something Knight always valued. And by the time he and the Chicago Bulls reached their first NBA Finals in 1991, He was an unstoppable force. His finals performance against Magic Johnson's Lakers signaled the beginning of the Bulls dynasty and marked his arrival as basketball's ultimate alpha. Knight followed MJ's career closely, often remarking that he knew from their Olympic days that this level of dominance was inevitable. Michael wasn't just about winning, Knight emphasized. He was about elevating the game behind him. You didn't just compete against Michael, you competed against perfection. And as great as MJ's achievements were on the court, 6 NBA championships, 5 MVP awards, countless game-winning shots, and jaw-dropping moments, his mental warfare with opponents became part of his lore, like Garnett's notorious trash talk and Tim Duncan's ability to get under his rival's skin with eerie calm. MJ played a similar game in his own way, whether it was smirking at defenders after a dunk, daring opponents to challenge him in crunch time, or demanding impossible standards from his teammates. He controlled every situation. And those who played against him often spoke of the aura he carried, something Knight had noticed years earlier in their Olympic run. Michael wasn't just a player. You felt him in every possession, every timeout, every adrenaline-filled second, Knight said. You didn't just play against Jordan, you were at the mercy of his mindset. And by the time Jordan retired in 1993, after completing his first three-peat with the Chicago Bulls, he had already transcended the sport. While personal tragedy and burnout contributed to his sabbatical, his return to basketball in 1995 set the stage for arguably the greatest stretch of dominance in NBA history, the second three-peat. From 1996 to 1998, he earned 3 more titles, propelling his legacy to untouchable heights. And Knight, despite being critical of stars who chase fame, respected how MJ managed the spotlight without losing sight of competition. MJ was never about the attention. It just came alongside the winning, Knight said. And it's this duality, the ability to be both ruthless in competition and magnetic to the world, that cemented his place as sports royalty. Isiah Thomas, the ultimate competitor. Few players in NBA history played the game with the combination of skill, grit, and relentless drive that Thomas brought to the court every single night. His journey didn't begin on an NBA floor or under the bright lights of championships. It started on the unforgiving streets of Chicago's West Side. Growing up in poverty and surrounded by challenges, Thomas viewed basketball as his way out, his chance to rewrite his family's history. From an early age, he played with an edge, a fiery confidence that refused to accept limitations, even when others doubted his small stature. His charisma wasn't polished. It was raw and incredibly effective. And by channeling his toughness and innate leadership, Thomas didn't just survive the harsh realities of his environment, he thrived in it. It's a mentality that would serve as the cornerstone for his legendary career. And when he earned the opportunity to play under Bob Knight at Indiana University, his tenacity only grew stronger. As a freshman, Thomas displayed his quickness, court vision, and ability to take control of games with uncanny ease. And yet, it was his personality, his fiery confidence, that drew Knight's attention. Knight famously said,
Part of the second half, we came out and played really, really well. Isiah Thomas got 2 quick buckets, and anyhow, we played as well as a team could play and ended up winning that. And that may be the best game there ever was.
Isiah didn't fear anybody. That's what made him special. And Knight didn't mince words when describing why Thomas was unlike any player he had ever coached. Despite their contrasting personalities, Knight's tough love approach and Thomas's strong-willed character, the pairing was electric. Under Knight's guidance, he developed into one of the most dynamic floor generals college basketball had ever seen, leading Indiana to the 1981 NCAA National Championship and earning most outstanding player honors for his clutch performances in the tournament. Knight would later remark, for a kid with so much talent, he might have been the hardest working kid I ever coached. Their championship run cemented his position as one of the best college players in history and showcased his ability to deliver in the biggest moments. And his transition to the NBA was seamless. Selected 2nd overall by the Detroit Pistons in 1981, Thomas wasted no time proving why he was special. From his very first game, he displayed the poise of a veteran, the creativity of an artist, and the determination of a street fighter. Thomas was never just a point guard. He was a leader, someone who could lift an entire franchise on his back. The Pistons needed him to be exactly that. And at the time, Detroit was a struggling team searching for an identity, and Thomas became the answer. By sheer force of will, he transformed them into contenders. But nothing came easily. Opposing teams doubted whether a point guard, especially one as small as Thomas, could truly dominate the NBA. They attacked him physically and tried to exploit the Pistons' lack of depth. And he didn't flinch. Instead, he pushed back harder, playing with a mix of heart and brilliance that earned immediate respect across the league. And as Thomas matured, so did the Pistons. The team was built in his image, quick, gritty, and unafraid of any challenge. The culmination of this transformation came in the form of the Bad Boys era, which forever altered NBA history. Known for their toughness, physical defense, and ability to play mind games against their competition, the Pistons weren't popular across the league. Their tactics often crossed the line, earning scorn from critics. But for Thomas, it wasn't just about being liked, it was about winning. And the Bad Boys were molded by his mentality, a combination of skill and ruthlessness that symbolized their rise to the top. Several rivalries defined his career, but none were more intense than his battles with Bird's Celtics and MJ's Chicago Bulls. The wars they waged on the court still hold a special place in NBA lore. And while each opponent had their strengths, none faced more relentless determination than Thomas himself. His rivalry with Jordan exemplified how ruthless competition could be. When the Pistons developed the infamous Jordan rules, their singular mission was to make life impossible for MJ. And Thomas embraced this defensive scheme wholeheartedly, a reflection of his belief in teamwork and smart game planning. While many players would shy away from taking the fight to the league's most dominant scorer, Thomas didn't. Instead, he thrived in the role as the architect of adversity for Chicago. "You don't let him breathe," Thomas once said about guarding MJ. "You play him tough from the start until the buzzer sounds. He's not going to break, so you can't break either." These battles weren't just physical, they were mental. And while Jordan eventually overcame Detroit, there's no doubt the Pistons pushed him to new heights. And of course, Thomas wasn't without controversy. The infamous handshake snub in the 1991 Eastern Conference Finals remains one of the most polarizing moments in NBA history. After the Bulls finally defeated the Pistons, Detroit walked off the court without shaking hands, a move widely criticized as poor sportsmanship. And Thomas bore the brunt of the backlash for his team's collective decision. But even years later, he stood by it. "We were competitors. You don't apologize for being tough," Thomas explained. For many, this epitomized his mindset. He cared more about competition than public approval. And despite controversies, his greatness was undeniable. His defining moment arguably came in Game 6 of the 1988 NBA Finals against the Lakers. Playing through an ankle injury, Thomas scored 25 points in the third quarter alone, a gutsy performance that remains one of the most courageous in NBA history. "I didn't care about the pain," Thomas said later. "I cared about winning." Though the Pistons fell short that season, his heroics helped lift Detroit to back-to-back championships in 1989 and 1990, cementing his legacy. 2 Finals MVPs and 12 All-Star appearances followed, solidifying his place amongst the legends of the game. And off the court, his fearless personality extended to his relationships with players and coaches. Bird remarked on how Thomas played every possession like it was personal. "Isiah lived inside your head during games," Bird said. This intensity made him beloved by teammates, but often disliked by opponents. And this former Laker, Byron Scott, captured this sentiment perfectly. "Every time you played against Thomas, you knew you were going to work harder than you ever thought possible, because that's how hard he worked every minute on the court." And when he retired in 1994, he left the game after 13 remarkable seasons defined by his leadership, grit, and refusal to back down. Villain in some eyes, hero in others, Thomas played basketball the only way he knew how, with the heart of a warrior. Larry Bird, the quiet killer. Known as the Hick from French Lick, Bird was an unassuming talent who became the face of excellence and consistency, building his career on unshakable fundamentals, unparalleled work ethic, and mind for the game that left opponents reeling. Fans often admired how he seemed to rise above the glitz and glamour of superstardom, focusing instead on what mattered most: winning. But Bird's journey toward greatness wasn't as simple as it might seem. Behind his calm demeanor and unbreakable confidence was a story of relentless drive and resilience, fueled by early challenges and unmatched preparation. Growing up in the small town of French Lick, Indiana, he learned quickly that life wasn't going to hand him anything easily. His family struggled financially, and the pressure of those circumstances forced him to develop grit and self-reliance from a young age. His love for basketball became his escape, and it was his way out. Day after day, he took to the barnyard court near his home, perfecting his jump shot against the cracks in the backboard. And these humble beginnings underscored Bird's lifelong philosophy. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. That mentality propelled him into the spotlight during his college days at Indiana State University, where he led the Sycamores to the NCAA championship game against Magic Johnson's Michigan State Spartans. Although Bird's team fell short, his performance cemented his reputation as one of the most promising talents in basketball, setting the stage for a rivalry with Magic that would define an era. And when Bird entered the NBA in 1979 as a Boston Celtic, he wasn't the flashy, explosive athlete that scouts typically drooled over. In Bob's words, Bird might not have been the fastest, but he understood the game like no one else. Knight admired his ability to compensate for physical limitations with basketball genius. He played the game 2 steps ahead of everyone. His knack for reading defenses, finding passing lanes, and exploiting mismatches, rivaling the precision of a chess master plotting moves. The Celtics, desperate to restore their once dominant legacy, found the perfect cornerstone in Bird, a player with the poise of a veteran and the drive of a rookie hungry to prove himself. His first few seasons in the league were nothing short of remarkable. He immediately lifted the Celtics from mediocrity to playoff contenders, earning Rookie of the Year honors and starting what would become a Hall of Fame career. And what separated him from other young stars, though, was his relentless preparation and ability to dominate games through simplicity. Bird didn't just rely on his talent. He spent countless hours shooting jumpers, working on his footwork, and studying opponents. This work ethic, exemplified by his habit of showing up before anyone else and leaving long after others, represented Knight's ideal of relentless preparation. Knight often pointed out that Bird's confidence was never arrogance. It was earned. He prepared so thoroughly that he entered each game with zero doubt about his ability to perform. And by the mid-1980s, Bird was firmly entrenched as one of the NBA's elite players, joining the likes of Magic Johnson and Kareem as the faces of the league. His 3 MVP awards from 1984 to 1986 captured what Knight valued most about him: the ability to make everyone around him better while remaining the focal point of his team's success. And during interviews, Knight expressed his admiration for how Bird could dominate games without sacrificing the team's flow. He called Bird's leadership a quiet killer mentality, alluding to his unshakable confidence and ability to rise to the occasion without needing theatrics. Larry, Knight said, just did it. He didn't need to tell you, he showed you. And his battles with Magic Johnson, both in college and in the NBA, illustrated what made him truly special. While Magic brought charisma and flash, Bird brought a methodical approach that often frustrated opponents. And their rivalry was less about personality and more about basketball philosophy, intuition versus calculation. Bird's Celtics and Magic's Lakers met 3 times in the NBA Finals, splitting victories in a feud that defined the 1980s. Knight often described these matchups as more than basketball games. They were chess matches played at warp speed, with Bird representing the cerebral, relentless side of the sport. And off the court, Bird avoided the spotlight, preferring to let his game speak for itself. But on the hardwood, he was one of the most underrated trash talkers in NBA history, using his wit and intelligence to get into opponents' heads. And by the time Bird reached the peak of his powers, he was carrying the Celtics to championships and redefining the limits of what a forward could achieve. His versatility as a scorer, passer, and rebounder made him nearly impossible to defend, and his leadership elevated Boston into one of the NBA's most dominant franchises. Bird's clutch performances in critical moments cemented his legacy, with Knight often pointing to Bird's infamous steal against the Detroit Pistons in the 1987 Eastern Conference Finals as pure genius. That play didn't just save the Celtics' season, it exemplified Bird's ability to think faster and execute better than anyone else. And despite his injuries, he adapted his game to support Boston's younger stars, showing the kind of selflessness that coaches like Knight cherished. Larry, Knight said, was basketball in its purest form. He didn't just play the game, he understood it, mastered it, and elevated it. And his journey from a small-town kid to an NBA legend resonated deeply with Knight, who often highlighted Bird as the ultimate example of everything valued in a player. Scott May, the dynasty builder. His rise to stardom began with humble beginnings. Growing up in Sandusky, Ohio, Scott displayed flashes of athletic brilliance early on, but basketball wasn't his initial focus. He dabbled in multiple sports, eventually finding his calling on the court during his high school years. And by the time he graduated, his combination of size, skill, and work ethic made him a highly sought-after recruit. Knight saw something special in Scott, an athlete who was never just physically gifted, but mentally tough, with a raw hunger to win. And when he joined the Indiana Hoosiers, it was clear he was destined for greatness. In his sophomore season at Indiana, he began to show why Knight had placed so much trust in him. His competitive fire, paired with a basketball IQ far beyond his years, instantly elevated the team. But the real magic came during the historic 1975-76 season, when Scott carved his name into basketball immortality. That year, under Knight's demanding leadership, he became the cornerstone of one of the most dominant teams in NCAA history. Knight often referred to that squad as a machine, and Scott was the beating heart of it. Whether it was a clutch jumper, a critical defensive stop, or leading by example, Scott embodied everything Knight valued in a player: selflessness, consistency, and the relentless pursuit of perfection. Knight's coaching style was famously intense and unyielding, but Scott thrived under the pressure. Knight once proclaimed, "Scott May was the kind of player you dreamed of coaching," highlighting how his refusal to shy away from challenges set him apart. His versatility on the floor, equally adept at scoring, defending, and making sharp decisions, formed the backbone of Indiana's dominance. And his ability to step up in crunch time was unparalleled. Games that felt tight or uncertain often turned into victory marches because Scott found another gear when the stakes were highest. His performances were a perfect match for Knight's overarching philosophy of team basketball: no man above the collective unit, and everyone playing their role to the fullest. Perhaps what stood out most about Scott during the championship run was his resilience. Late in the season, he suffered a fractured wrist, threatening Indiana's perfect season and his ability to perform in critical games. For most players, this would have been a devastating setback, but he was no ordinary player. Knight later remarked, "Scott wasn't just tough physically, his mentality was stronger than most people I've ever coached. And with the help of the Indiana training staff and his unwavering determination, he returned to finish out the season and lead his team to victory after victory." His contributions culminated in an NCAA championship, a moment that cemented his legacy as one of the greatest college players ever. His accolades during that season were staggering. He earned the Naismith Award and consensus All-American honors, solidifying his place not just in Indiana basketball lore, but on the national stage as well. But for Knight, Scott's impact went beyond the numbers, embodying the spirit of excellence that Knight instilled in all his players. And as the 1976 Hoosiers completed their undefeated season, a feat nearly unheard of at any level of basketball, Knight reflected on the role Scott played in making it all happen. Without Scott, we're not talking about a perfect season. His leadership, his skill, his unselfishness, that's what made this team special, Knight said during a post-game interview. And their connection went beyond player-coach dynamics. Knight admired Scott for his humility and character just as much as his performance. In one famous tribute, Knight said, "There's greatness, and there's Scott May." When you coach someone like him, you realize what true leadership looks like. And today, his story represents the pinnacle of teamwork, resilience, and sacrifice. A player who gave everything for his team and became immortalized as a cornerstone of basketball history. Bill Walton, the intellectual force. Standing at 6'11" and armed with a deep understanding of the game, Bill wasn't just dominant physically, he was a thinker, a strategist, and, as Bob Knight once said, one of the smartest ever encountered. But his story isn't simply one of triumph. It's a journey marked by grit, resilience, and an unwavering dedication to basketball. His path to becoming one of Knight's favorite players began with a stellar collegiate career at UCLA under the legendary John Wooden. During his years with the Bruins, Bill became synonymous with intelligence and discipline, embodying the mindfulness that Coach Wooden preached to his teams. He not only led UCLA to 2 NCAA championships, but also helped deliver a record-breaking 88-game winning streak. And his dominance at UCLA earned him countless accolades, including back-to-back NCAA Player of the Year awards. Knight admired his methodical approach to preparation and ability to elevate his teammates, qualities that Wooden himself praised. Bill was the unshakable foundation of one of the college basketball's greatest dynasties. Expectations were sky high for the imposing center, and fans had witnessed his dominance in college, but no one was prepared for the advances as a professional. His time with the Portland Trail Blazers seemed cursed by injuries, as his body struggled to withstand the rigors of the league. Yet, amidst the setbacks, Walton managed to put together one of the most incredible seasons in NBA since 1977. That year, Portland's young squad, led by Walton, shocked the world. His mastery on defense, rebounding, and passing turned Portland into an unstoppable force. He led the franchise to its first and only NBA championship that season, earning Finals MVP honors along the way. And Bob Knight was one of the many basketball minds who admired his brilliance on the court, calling him an artist who created beauty in a game often dominated by brute force. But Walton's path in the NBA didn't follow the smooth trajectory many hoped for. After his championship season, injuries robbed him of precious years in his prime, and yet, each time he stepped on the court, he managed to remind the world why Knight and other coaches revered him so deeply. Even when limited physically, Bill's sheer brilliance as a passer and defender made him invaluable to his team. Knight respected his ability to outthink opponents, describing him as a player who could dominate the game without having to score 20 points every night. And regardless of his setbacks, his career continued to inspire those around him, and nowhere was this more evident than during his time with the Boston Celtics late in his career. And by then, his resilience and unique understanding of the game had won the respect of legends like Bird and Red Auerbach. Bill accepted his role as a bench player and became one of the most impactful sixth men in NBA history, helping the Celtics capture the 1986 NBA championship. And Knight often praised Bill's willingness to adapt and find ways to contribute, calling it the ultimate sign of a true basketball genius. And throughout his career, his style reflected Knight's ideals for basketball, to play with intelligence, teamwork, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. And despite his struggles with injuries, Walton's ability to remain impactful in key moments earned him legendary status. Knight often used his story as an example for his players, urging them to value the mental side of the game as much as their physical talents. Walton's resilience, combined with his ability to elevate those around him, was a testament to the power of team dynamics, a principle Knight held close throughout his coaching career. Oscar Robertson, the Big O. Nicknamed the Big O, Oscar transformed the game with his unique ability to control every aspect of play. He was basketball's original triple-double machine, rebounding and playmaking with precision that left his teammates and opponents in awe. But before he became a legend, Oscar's journey was defined by extraordinary challenges, resilience, and groundbreaking accomplishments that reshaped the sport forever. His early life was in grit. Born into poverty in segregated Indianapolis, Robertson grew up in a time of intense racial discrimination. Like countless African Americans, he experienced hardships that extended far beyond the basketball court. He didn't start playing with leather basketballs or in gyms. His introduction to the sport was much humbler, a tennis ball and a makeshift hoop fashioned from a coat hanger. And yet, even with limited resources, basketball quickly became his escape, his solace, and ultimately, the foundation for his greatness. Basketball was always more than just a game for me, Robertson once said. It was a way to prove myself, to rise above everything holding me back. And by high school, his extraordinary skill set was unstoppable. At Crispus Attucks High School, he led his team to back-to-back Indiana State titles in 1955 and 1956, becoming the first African-American team in the state to accomplish such a feat. His precision and court vision were unparalleled, earning him unanimous praise, but his journey was marred by racism. Crispus Attucks' team faced angry crowds, harsh stereotyping, and unfair treatment. And despite all of this, he excelled beyond expectations, emerging as a beacon of talent in a tumultuous era, When they write the Oscar Robertson story, it always starts with Crispus Attucks, because that's where the foundation was laid, Robertson reflected in later interviews. And after his dominant high school career, he took his talents to the University of Cincinnati, where he continued to redefine basketball excellence. For 3 seasons with the Bearcats, Robertson averaged an incredible 33.8 points per game, becoming the first player in NCAA history to average a triple-double over an entire season. And yet, even in college, racism followed him. He often had to stay in segregated hotels away from his white teammates during road games, an experience that left a profound impact on his worldview. His efforts propelled him into professional basketball, where he became one of the NBA's most dominant players from the moment he entered the league in 1960. As the #1 overall pick in the draft, Robertson immediately dazzled fans and critics alike with his versatility and high basketball IQ. And fans admired the way he controlled games, finding teammates with pinpoint passes and knocking down mid-range shots with machine-like consistency. He was known for his ability to see plays unfold before his opponents could react. Robertson accumulated triple-doubles at a rate unheard of during his era. He famously averaged a triple-double over the course of the entire 1961-62 NBA season, a feat that cemented his name in basketball history. And as Bob Knight often said in admiration, watching Oscar Robertson was like watching a master sculptor at work. Every movement had intention. Every pass was perfect. It was basketball mastery. However, Robertson wasn't immune to criticism. Playing for the Cincinnati Royals, the Big O often faced media and fan scrutiny for his perceived lack of championships, an unfair characterization considering the consistently mediocre rosters surrounding him. And despite the obstacles, he never relented in his pursuit of greatness. In his words, individual stats are nice, but championships are what you play for. That's what makes a legacy. And the defining chapter of his career came when he was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks in 1970. Joining forces with Kareem, Robertson finally had the support he needed to chase the elusive championship. Their dynamic partnership propelled the Bucks to a dominant season, with Robertson providing veteran leadership and flawless playmaking. In 1971, the Bucks captured their first NBA title, giving him the ultimate validation of his greatness. Though his basketball accomplishments were astonishing, Robertson's legacy reaches far beyond the court. He was a staunch advocate for players' rights, fighting for free agency and fairer contracts, a battle often overlooked, but one that revolutionized sports. As president of the National Basketball Players Association, Robertson was pivotal in challenging the NBA's reserve clause, which essentially bound players to their teams indefinitely. His advocacy led to the landmark 1976 legal settlement, granting players free agency, a move that forever altered professional sports. It wasn't just about the money, Robertson explained. It was about fairness, simply giving players the chance to determine their own future. And as Bob Knight would often say, reflecting on Robertson's greatness, if you could start a team with one player who could control everything on the floor, that player would be Oscar Robertson. There's no one else like him. Never will be. From his humble beginnings with a coat hanger hoop to his extraordinary NBA career, Robertson's story is one of perseverance and undeniable greatness, the perfect embodiment of what it means to be the Big O. And for Knight, success was never just about talent. It was about toughness, discipline, and the ability to rise to the occasion. Knight's admiration for these players was rooted in their ability to embody the principles he valued most. Each of these players left a mark, not just on his career, but on basketball history, showcasing what it truly means to play the game the right way. All right, that's all for today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.